They laughed when I signed the divorce papers, tossing me into the freezing rain without a single dime to my name. They thought I was a broken, naive housewife. I just smiled. What my arrogant husband didn't realize was I had already lived this day once. This time, the executioner was me. The sound of screeching tires and shattering glass still haunts my nightmares. In my previous life, that was how it ended. I was 28 years old, shivering in an alleyway, clutching a thin coat around my bruised body, when a black SUV deliberately mounted the curb and crushed me against a brick wall. As I lay there, choking on my own blood, the passenger window rolled down. Chloe Harding, my husband's loyal executive assistant, leaned out, her lips painted a vibrant, cruel crimson. "Liam says goodbye, Harper," she had whispered, dropping a crumpled ultrasound photo onto the wet pavement next to my face. My ultrasound photo. I died with the bitter taste of absolute betrayal in my mouth. For 5 years, I had been the invisible ghost behind Liam Carmichael's success. When his family's real estate and logistics empire, Carmichael Industries, was on the brink of bankruptcy, it was my financial modeling and late-night negotiations that saved them. When Liam stumbled drunk into board meetings, I fed him the answers through an earpiece. I gave them my youth, my brilliance, and my unquestioning loyalty. In return, Liam and his tyrannical mother, Madeline, framed me for corporate embezzlement, drained my personal trust fund, and kicked me out into the street. They needed a fall guy, and they needed me gone so Liam could marry his pregnant mistress. But death wasn't the end. It was a reset. I woke up gasping, tangled in the silk sheets of the Carmichael master bedroom, my heart hammering against my ribs. The calendar on my nightstand read October 14th, exactly 1 year before the day they would throw me out. I spent that entire year preparing. If they wanted a villain, I would give them a monster. I played the part of the docile, oblivious wife flawlessly. I smiled when Liam came home smelling of Chloe's cheap gardenia perfume. I poured Madeline her morning Earl Grey tea while she made snide comments about my modest background and my inability to produce an heir. I let them believe they were the puppet masters. But in the shadows, I was building an empire. I liquidated the hidden offshore accounts my late grandfather had left me, accounts the Carmichaels knew nothing about, and funneled the capital into a shell corporation. Through my grandfather's oldest friend and my fiercest ally, Arthur Pendleton, I founded Vanguard Apex, a private equity firm that operated entirely in the dark. While Liam spent his afternoons in hotel rooms with Chloe, I was in secure, encrypted video conferences with the world's most aggressive venture capitalists. Within 12 months, Vanguard Apex was a multi-billion-dollar shadow titan, and I was its anonymous CEO. Then came the day, October 14th, exactly 1 year later. I sat on the velvet sofa in the grand parlor of the Carmichael estate. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cigars and impending doom. Liam stood by the fireplace, looking appropriately solemn, while Madeline sat opposite me, a manila folder resting on her lap. Chloe hovered near the mahogany doors, clutching an iPad, her eyes gleaming with suppressed glee. "Harper," Madeline began, her voice dripping with venom disguised as pity. "We have uncovered something incredibly disturbing. It breaks my heart to say this, but the auditors have found severe discrepancies in the offshore logistics accounts. Millions are missing." Liam sighed heavily, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "We traced the IP addresses, Harper. The transfers were authorized from your personal laptop. We know you've been funneling company money into private accounts. In my first life, this was the moment I shattered. I had fallen to my knees, sobbing, begging them to believe me, frantically trying to explain that my laptop had been lost for weeks, that Chloe was the only one who had my passwords. I had clung to Liam's pant leg, screaming for him to defend the woman he supposedly loved. This time, I just crossed my legs, smoothing the fabric of my simple beige skirt. "Is that so?" I asked, my voice terrifyingly steady. Madeline's perfectly drawn eyebrows twitched. She wasn't used to this lack of hysterics. She slid the folder across the glass coffee table. "We have drafted a separation agreement. If you sign this, relinquishing all claims to Carmichael Industries, waiving any right to alimony, and leaving this house today with nothing but your personal clothing, we will not press criminal charges. If you fight us, Liam will have you arrested before sunset." I leaned forward and picked up the heavy brass pen sitting beside the papers. I didn't even bother reading the fake evidence. I already knew every forged signature and fabricated wire transfer Chloe had meticulously created. "Harper, please don't make this harder than it has to be," Liam said, his voice laced with mock sorrow. "I loved you once, but I can't be married to a thief." I looked up at him. The man I had once worshipped now looked like a stranger, a weak, pathetic little boy, playing dress-up in a CEO's suit. "I completely understand, Liam," I said. I flipped to the last page of the divorce decree and signed my name with a flourish. No tears, no hesitation. The room fell dead silent. Madeline stared at the signature, as if it were written in alien hieroglyphs. Chloe's smug smile faltered, replaced by a deep, unsettled frown. They had prepared for a war, for a screaming match, for a desperate woman clinging to her lavish lifestyle. My immediate surrender unnerved them. "I'll pack my things," I said, standing up gracefully. I looked directly at Chloe. "You can stop standing by the door like a stray dog waiting for scraps, Chloe. The master bedroom is all yours now. Just make sure you wash the sheets. Liam sweats terribly when he lies." Liam's face flushed a violent shade of red. "Get out," he hissed, his charming facade slipping. "Get out of my house." "With pleasure," I replied. 20 minutes later, I walked out the massive iron gates of the Carmichael estate. I had one suitcase containing nothing but a few changes of clothes and my mother's jewelry. As the gates clanged shut behind me, the skies opened up, unleashing a torrential downpour. In my past life, this was where my spirit broke. In this life, I stood in the rain and laughed. A sleek, bulletproof black Maybach pulled up smoothly to the curb, its tires splashing the puddles. The back door swung open, and Arthur Pendleton leaned out, holding a massive black umbrella. "Perfect timing, Arthur," I smiled, stepping into the luxurious, leather-scented interior of the car. "Did everything go exactly as you predicted, Ms. Harper?" the older man asked, handing me a plush towel. "To the letter," I replied, drying my face. I looked out the tinted window at the sprawling mansion fading into the distance. They think they've cut the anchor that was dragging them down. They don't realize they've just thrown away their only parachute. Arthur chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "And our next move?" "Take me to the Vanguard Apex headquarters," I said, my voice hardening into steel. "It's time to show my dear ex-husband what real power looks like." The Vanguard Apex building was a towering monolith of black glass and steel in the heart of the financial district, a stark contrast to the old money brick-and-mortar headquarters of Carmichael Industries. I stepped out of the private elevator on the top floor and walked into a bustling hive of the sharpest financial minds in the city. As I walked down the corridor, I shed the beige, frumpy cardigan of Harper the housewife. I changed in my private suite, stepping into a sharp, tailored crimson power suit. When I emerged, I wasn't Liam's quiet, submissive partner anymore. I was a predator. I entered the main boardroom where my senior acquisition team was waiting. The room fell silent as I took my seat at the head of the long oak table. "Status report on the Horizon Tech deal," I demanded, skipping the pleasantries. "My lead analyst, a razor-sharp prodigy named Julian." Wait, I need to avoid Julian. Let's use Harrison. My lead analyst, a razor-sharp prodigy named Harrison, clicked a button on a remote, bringing up a massive holographic display of financial projections. "Carmichael Industries is all in, Ms. Harper," Harrison said, adjusting his glasses. "Liam Carmichael has officially made a bid to acquire Horizon Tech for $1.2 billion. He's liquidating their commercial real estate portfolio in the European sector to secure the cash." I smiled, a cold, calculating curve of my lips. Horizon Tech was a cutting-edge artificial intelligence startup that specialized in predictive logistics routing. Carmichael Industries' core business was crumbling. Their supply chains were bloated, their fleets were outdated, and their overhead was bleeding them dry. Liam believed that acquiring Horizon Tech's algorithm would instantly modernize his company, cutting costs by 40% and saving his family's legacy. It was his desperate Hail Mary pass. What Liam didn't know was that Horizon Tech was a trap. I had recognized Horizon Tech's potential months ago, but I also knew their algorithm had a fatal flaw. It couldn't scale to global operations without collapsing under its own data weight. The founders were desperate to sell before the tech industry figured it out. "Liam is arrogant," I told the room, steepling my fingers. "He won't do his own due diligence. He relies on his mother's connections and his own inflated sense of charm. But we aren't just going to let him buy a flawed company. We are going to bleed him dry in the process." "How do we proceed, ma'am?" Arthur asked from my right side. "We start a bidding war," I instructed. "I want Vanguard Apex to anonymously bid $1.4 billion for Horizon Tech by end of day. Force Liam to panic. He's already promised his shareholders that this acquisition is a done deal. If he loses Horizon, Carmichael Industries' stock will plummet, and his board will vote him out. He will have to counteroffer. He will have to drain every last drop of liquidity the Carmichaels have." Harrison typed furiously on his tablet. "If we push the price to $1.8 billion, Liam will be forced to leverage his core assets, the shipping ports, as collateral." "Exactly," I said softly, the memory of my first life's miserable end burning behind my eyes. "I want him to mortgage the very foundation of his family's empire. Push the bid." Across town, in the lavish, oak-paneled CEO office of Carmichael Industries, Liam was throwing a victory party too early. I had bugs planted in that office months ago. Not just audio, but full access to his private network. I sat in my office later that afternoon, sipping a glass of rare scotch, listening to the live audio feed of my ex-husband's demise. "To the future of Carmichael Industries," Liam's voice echoed through my speakers. There was the clinking of crystal champagne flutes. "You did it, baby," Chloe's sickeningly sweet voice cooed. "You saved the company. And with that dead weight, Harper finally out of the picture. There's nothing stopping us. She was always holding me back, Liam scoffed arrogantly. Always whining about risk assessment and sustainable growth. She had a peasant's mindset, Chloe. She didn't understand how to play in the big leagues. I took a slow sip of my scotch. Oh, Liam. You have no idea what league you're playing in now. Suddenly, the audio feed captured the sound of the office doors bursting open. Liam! It was Madeline's voice, sharp and frantic. Drop the glass. We have a massive problem. Mother, what is it? Liam asked, his tone instantly shifting to a defensive whine. Someone just outbid us for Horizon Tech, Madeline snapped. A shadow equity firm called Vanguard Apex just threw $1.4 billion on the table. The Horizon board is threatening to walk away from our gentleman's agreement unless we can beat the cash offer. What? Liam shouted. I could hear the sound of shattering glass as he likely threw his flute against the wall. That's impossible. Nobody even knew we were looking at Horizon except my inner circle. Who the hell is Vanguard Apex? It doesn't matter who they are, Madeline barked. What matters is that if we don't close this deal by Friday, the quarterly earnings report will leak, and our creditors will call in the massive loans you took out last year. We will be ruined, Liam. You have to beat their bid. With what money? Liam yelled back, the panic finally setting in. We're tapped out. I already liquidated the European assets. Then mortgage the domestic ports, Madeline ordered ruthlessly. Put up the entire eastern seaboard infrastructure as collateral. Just secure Horizon Tech. Once we have the algorithm, our stock will double, and we can pay off the short-term debt. I smiled into the silence of my own office. They were walking blindly into the slaughterhouse, guided by their own greed and desperation. Harrison, I said, pressing the intercom button on my desk. Yes, Ms. Harper. They took the bait. They're going to leverage the domestic ports to counteroffer. I want Vanguard Apex to push the bid to $1.9 billion tomorrow morning. Make them bleed for it. But when they hit $2 billion, I paused, a dark thrill coursing through my veins. Let them have it. Let them win? Harrison asked, slightly confused. Let them buy a ticking time bomb, I corrected. And once the ink is dry on their contracts, we leak the truth about Horizon's faulty algorithm to the press. Carmichael Industries will crash, the banks will seize their collateral, and Vanguard Apex will be waiting in the shadows to buy their century-old empire for pennies on the dollar. I turned my chair to look out the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the rain wash over the city below. Liam and Madeline thought they had discarded a piece of trash today. They didn't know they had just unleashed a titan. The game was no longer about survival. It was about absolute, unequivocal annihilation. And the best part was, they still thought I was crying in some motel room, mourning the loss of a man who was already a walking corpse. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Vanguard Apex moved with the relentless efficiency of a great white shark. We bumped the bid to $1.6 billion. Liam matched it an hour later. We pushed to $1.8 billion. The silence from the Carmichael camp stretched for a nerve-wracking 6 hours. Through the audio feed tapped into Liam's office, I listened to the empire crumbling from within. I heard the sound of Madeline weeping in rage, demanding Liam sign over the deeds to the eastern seaboard shipping terminals. I heard Chloe trying to placate him, only for Liam to scream at her to shut up. The stress was tearing them apart before the trap had even fully closed. Finally, right before the market closed on Thursday, Carmichael Industries submitted a desperate, staggering counteroffer. $2 billion. They had leveraged every brick, every ship, and every drop of goodwill their century-old name possessed. They were officially mortgaged to the hilt. Harrison looked up from his glowing monitors, his hand hovering over his keyboard. They hit the 2 billion mark, Ms. Harper. We are primed to push to 2.1. I stood up, smoothing the front of my blazer, a frigid smile spreading across my face. No, we're done. Withdraw our bid entirely. Let them have Horizon Tech. Let them choke on it. Harrison's eyes widened, but he executed the command instantly. That Friday, the press went wild. Carmichael Industries made front-page news across the financial sector, heralded for their aggressive visionary acquisition of Horizon Tech. Liam gave a smug interview on a major financial network, with Chloe clinging to his arm, wearing a diamond engagement ring the size of a golf ball. He boasted about how he had single-handedly dragged his family's legacy into the future, casting off the archaic dead weight of the past. I watched the broadcast from my penthouse, sipping espresso. Enjoy the applause, Liam. It's the last you'll ever hear. I gave them exactly 1 month to celebrate. I let them integrate Horizon software into their primary logistics network. I let Liam throw a lavish $1 million engagement gala at the Plaza Hotel, rubbing his fabricated success in the faces of New York's elite. It was during the height of that very gala that I gave Harrison the green light. At 9:12 p.m., while Liam was standing on a stage raising a glass of Dom Perignon to his own brilliance, an anonymous dossier was mass-leaked to every major financial regulatory board, tech journalist, and Wall Street analyst in the country. The dossier contained irrefutable proof, buried deep within Horizon source code, that the predictive algorithm was a hollow shell. It could barely handle regional distribution, let alone the global multi-continental shipping network of Carmichael Industries. Worse, the integration had already begun corrupting Carmichael's existing databases, causing massive routing failures, lost shipments, and millions in daily penalties. I wasn't at the plaza, but I had access to the security cameras. I watched on my tablet as the phones in the ballroom began to buzz simultaneously. I watched the color drain from the faces of Liam's investors as they read the breaking headlines. Carmichael's $2 billion. Blunder, Horizon Tech algorithm exposed as fraud. Panic erupted. Board members cornered Liam, shouting in his face. Madeline clutched her chest, sinking into a chair as the reality of their over-leveraged debt crashed down on her. The eastern seaboard ports, the lifeblood of their revenue, were collateral for a useless piece of software. If the stock tanked on Monday, the banks would call in the loans immediately. And on Monday morning, the stock didn't just tank. It plummeted into the abyss. Carmichael Industries lost 60% of its valuation in 4 hours. Trading was halted twice. Shippers pulled their contracts, terrified of the catastrophic routing errors destroying their supply chains. The banks, smelling blood in the water, issued immediate margin calls. The Carmichaels needed to produce $800 million in liquid cash by Friday, or their creditors would seize the company, force a bankruptcy, and auction off the pieces. They were ruined. Their empire that had taken 4 generations to build had been decimated in a matter of weeks. In his office, Liam was unraveling. The hidden audio feed transmitted the sound of shattering furniture and desperate, sobbing phone calls to old money friends who suddenly wouldn't pick up his calls. "We need a bailout," Madeline screeched, her voice hoarse and broken. "Call Vanguard Apex, the shadow firm that bid against us. They wanted Horizon. Maybe they still want the infrastructure. Beg them, Liam. Do whatever it takes." I leaned back in my leather chair at Vanguard headquarters, the dark thrill of absolute victory washing over me. "Arthur," I called out to my trusted advisor, "set up a meeting with the Carmichael board for tomorrow morning. Tell them the CEO of Vanguard Apex is willing to offer them a buyout to avoid total bankruptcy." "At what price, Ms. Harper?" Arthur asked, a knowing gleam in his eye. "Pennies," I whispered. "I want the whole damn thing for pennies." The boardroom of Carmichael Industries smelled of stale sweat and despair. The mahogany table, once a symbol of immense power, now looked like a tombstone. I arrived 10 minutes late, purposely letting them marinate in their anxiety. I wore a tailored black trench coat, sharp stiletto heels, and oversized sunglasses. Arthur flanked me on my left, holding the ironclad acquisition contracts, while a team of Vanguard's ruthless corporate lawyers trailed behind us. When the heavy oak doors swung open, the room fell dead silent. Liam was seated at the head of the table, looking 10 years older. His eyes were bloodshot, his designer suit wrinkled, his hair disheveled. Madeline looked frail, the arrogant fire completely extinguished from her eyes. Chloe sat in the corner, nervously twisting her massive engagement ring, realizing she had hitched her wagon to a sinking ship. They didn't recognize me at first. I had changed my hair, my posture, my entire aura. I walked to the opposite end of the long table, took off my sunglasses, and set them down with a sharp clack. Liam's jaw dropped. The breath hitched in his throat, as if he had just seen a ghost. "Harper!" he gasped, his voice trembling with a mixture of confusion and horror. Madeline's face went paper white. "What is the meaning of this? How did you get past security? Where is the CEO of Vanguard Apex?" I didn't sit down. I simply leaned forward, resting my hands flat on the polished wood. "You're looking at her, Madeline," I said, my voice echoing off the silent walls. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bone. Liam stared at me, his eyes darting frantically from me to Arthur, to the army of lawyers backing me up, and finally, to the Vanguard Apex logo embossed on the contract folders. "No," Liam whispered, shaking his head in frantic denial. "No, that's impossible. You're a housewife. You didn't have a dime. You left here with one suitcase." "I left here with my freedom, Liam," I corrected, my tone dripping with icy contempt. "And while you were busy playing CEO and sleeping with your assistant, I was quietly building a firm that could swallow your pathetic legacy whole. I was the one who drove up the price of Horizon Tech. I was the one who leaked the algorithm's fatal flaws to the press. I orchestrated every single second of your downfall." Chloe let out a pathetic whimper from the corner. You set us up?" "I gave you the rope, Chloe," I stated coldly, not even looking at her. "You and Liam were more than to hang yourselves with it." I gestured to Arthur, who slid the acquisition papers down the length of the table. They stopped right in front of Liam. "The banks are seizing your ports tomorrow at noon," I said, my voice sharp and commanding. "Vanguard Apex is offering to assume your debt and buy Carmichael Industries out of receivership. The purchase price is exactly $1. In exchange, I take sole ownership of all assets, patents, and subsidiaries. You, Liam, and Madeline will step down immediately, forfeiting all severance packages. If you don't sign this right now, the banks will take everything, and you will both be facing federal fraud charges for the forged documents you used to frame me last year. Oh yes, I kept the receipts. Madeline began to sob, a wretched, guttural sound. You can't do this, Harper. This is our family. This is 100 years of history. We took you in. You threw me into the freezing rain and told me I was a thief, I fired back, my eyes blazing with the fury of 2 lifetimes. Sign the paper, Liam, or I swear to God I will have you walking out of this building in handcuffs before lunch. Liam looked down at the contract. His hands shook violently. He looked at Chloe, as if hoping for support. But the mistress had already realized the gravy train had derailed. She was staring at him with pure disgust, quietly slipping the diamond ring off her finger and dropping it into her purse. Defeated, utterly broken. Liam picked up his pen. A tear slipped down his cheek and splattered onto the signature line. He signed away his family's empire, his wealth, and his dignity in one shaky stroke. Arthur stepped forward, smoothly pulling the signed document away. "A pleasure doing business with you," he murmured. I turned on my heel, my coat billowing slightly behind me. "Harper, wait!" Liam cried out, his voice cracking in pathetic desperation. "I made a mistake. I was manipulated. I still love you. We can fix this. We can run the company together." I paused at the doors, glancing over my shoulder. I looked at the man who had killed me in another life, the man who had tried to destroy me in this one. He was nothing but a hollow shell, begging for scraps. "Wash the sheets on your way out, Liam," I said softly, echoing my parting words from a year ago. "I'm having the furniture burned tomorrow." I walked out of the boardroom and stepped into the private elevator. The doors slid shut, sealing my past away forever. I had been reborn to be a victim, but I chose to be a conqueror. The empire was mine, and the view from the top was absolutely breathtaking. If you loved seeing Harper totally crush her toxic ex and take back her power, smash that like button. What would you have done if you were in Harper's shoes? Let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our daily stories of karma, revenge, and ultimate comebacks. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that the best revenge is massive success. See you next time.